Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Sunday Scan. We have it for Sunday, July 21st, and the week ahead. I hope that everyone had a great weekend. The markets have been wild, so we have lots to cover. We're going to stick to the format where I just go over a couple of things that have been happening in the market, and then later on we're going to bring on Stan to go over some main watches and to show what we have on watch for the week ahead. So just a couple of things to kick us off. And the first is that the markets have just been wild. Nate has compared this to like the COVID markets where you just have insane range on the upside, on the downside. Things are moving with volume. And this is really like a trader's market. And this is where, people who have strategies can really capitalize, build their accounts and make a difference in their lives. And so this is just a great market to really take advantage of. And IU, Investors Underground has just been all over these trades. We have, so many experienced traders in the room, and they all have their kind of like different specialty that they focus on. So we've been able to, do a lot of liquidity traps, failed follow-through setups, reversals, options trades, macro trades, small cap trades, long, short, just basically everything, every corner of the market that is moving, we have people who are nailing that and they're sharing those trades. And people are just doing very well right now. And so, we've talked about this before where, we say that IU has all this technology, all these traders and everything. But the problem is that unless you're a member, you don't really get to see it. And everyone who's already in IU is watching this unfold, and it's amazing. But one of the areas where we could have done better is we need to get people who aren't in IU yet to be able to see that. And so I was talking with Nate and a couple of the other people at Investors Underground, and what we wanted to do is give people a way that they can just open the door and peek at what's in IU without committing to a membership, without doing anything. We just want to give you a way to basically see what we have to offer. And so IU is running a deal right now, which they're going to do it for a very short period of time. But it's basically giving people a chance to access everything that IU has for a very short period of time for next to nothing. So if they've never done this before, they probably won't do it again, but we want to see how people respond to actually just checking out what is in Investors Underground and is it right for you? And if not, that's fine. And there's no risk to trying something like this. So they set up an entire deal for people to basically get access to everything that IU has to offer for a very small period of time. So click the link in the description or on the video, and that will lead you to the page where you can actually see what the deal is. But for anyone who's been on the fence, it's 100% a no-brainer. It's really something to consider. All these people who are trading in there, this is how they make their living. They specialize in a couple of setups, a couple of strategies, and you don't have to go about trading on your own. You don't have to learn this all for the first time. There's people who already do it, who do it very well, and they want to share that with other people. And then that's just kind of on the trader part, but then you have all the technology, all the scanners, the alerts, breaking news, AI scrapers. Like there's just so much that Investors Underground has to offer. And so like we take it for granted because we trade with it every single day. But now we want to basically let everyone who's on the outside to be able to peek into that and to see if it's right for them. So if you are an independent trader, if you trade with your friends or with a trading pod, as they're called, give them the deal too, and they'll be able to peek in and see if it's right for them. And I think it'll make a world of difference for your trading, just like how it has for mine and for all the other traders who are in there already. So if there's one thing that you take away from the scan, it's definitely click that link and see what the deal is so that you get a very short window for full access to everything that IU has to offer. Watch lists, webinars, the chat, the educational resources. Like we just have so much, all the technology, and you'll be able to get to basically experience all of that for a little window of time before the deal goes away. So definitely take advantage of that. And now moving on to the next part of Scan, let's go over what has been happening and what has been moving in the markets. Okay, so it's been a super eventful week. We had a couple of themes that really emerged, and we saw those play out. And so one of those themes over the last week and a half or so was that big rotation trade. And we talked about that, how, the AI sector, all the chip names, those have been getting all the attention. And then the market started to broaden out or rotate into some of the other names like Google and Meta and some of those. But then it started to rotate again into more small caps. And so that's like IWM here, that tracks the small cap index. And so what you really got to see is a big rotation out or money leaving some things like the chip names, and SOXL is really just the levered version of the semiconductor ETF. And so you can see, big move down in that ETF there, and a lot of money came out of things like NVIDIA, AMD, and ARM. A lot of those names that have been trending up, they had a big flush, and a lot of that money went into some of the smaller names. And we've talked about a couple of reasons why small caps can get bid at this part of like the cycle. And so for the last couple of years, you've had interest rates that are very high, and that is damaging for small companies. But now that the Fed has the data that they need to start cutting, possibly in September, maybe even a little bit sooner, but most likely September, then they can now feel confident about buying small caps and having a better edge. And so that's really when you started to see small caps or IWM start to trend up really strongly, is when that data came out. And then you had some news about, Trump's, kind of odds going up in the polls. And so that's another thing that could be considered beneficial for some smaller companies based on certain policies in place versus others. But basically, you had a couple of factors that just helped IWM to be more bid. And so we were watching this for the last, 2 weeks of really being bid up, and it made perfect sense as bond yields came down. And so you just had that big rotation trade out of some of the large tech names and into some of the smaller names as that market broadens out. And then we talked about having kind of two strategies. And one is when something is trending really well, like whether it's small caps or whether it's Tesla or whether it's SMCI, you have these really nice runs up that are accompanied by large amounts of call buying. And then you basically have a turning point, maybe close to an expiration date, and then you have that mean reversion trade. And IWM is just a perfect example of this playing out. And so if we see, the buying started here, you had the event or the news, the key variables driving it, and then you just had it straight bid for about, a week and a half, 2 weeks or so. And that's really this first part. So when something's trending like that, what you're looking for is to identify the key variables. You're looking for it to absorb dips and basically just be the path of least resistance on the way up. Money is flowing in, and so you have these names or these indexes basically just getting flooded with money, and that's how you get those really nice trend moves higher. And now as that's happening, you have things like call buying and everything else that can basically add flows to the stock or basically make it trend really nicely in one direction. And so one way to kind of think about this is like a tide coming in versus going out. And there's a certain amount of time, whether it's in the ocean or whatever, where you have everything is just making it easy for the water to go in. And then you get to a maximum point when it comes from switching from high tide to low tide, and you just have it reverse. And instead of creeping up further and further on the beach, then it starts to just pull back. And that's exactly what you see close to these big expirations, like monthly options expiration for IWM over the past week. And so what we were trying to do is basically time when that would switch. And we look at Thursdays and Fridays for that really big move to start to, have the tide going from being high tide to then being low tide, or the options and the call options going from helping the stock or the index up to then weighing on it and dragging it down. And so, I think on Wednesday or so, it started to turn a little bit and consolidated. And then that Thursday, Friday, that's really when it flushed. And we were able to capitalize on that with puts. And that was all called out in the room. And, a lot of people made a lot of money on certain trades like that. And so it's not just about, just the technicals. It's about having a thesis in place, understanding the reasoning of why something's moving, and then knowing how to play it on the front side while it's trending up, and then looking for those, key variables to shift, or those pivot points, and then when it goes from high tide to then low tide, that's when you can capitalize on the way down. So these are all strategies and things that we go over in Investors Underground again and again, and this has been one that's worked super well this year, whether it's been with IWM or whether it's been with some of the chip names or a trending mega cap. It's something to really learn and to pay attention to. And then DJT, this was a big one after some of the recent news events. We had a big spike in that, and then you can see that this is just a really classic example of failed follow through, where you have this big swipe up, and then you start to have some retests, and then it starts to fail, retest below like a key level, fail again, and the process unfolds. And I think that there was some dilution or some insider selling in this stock, and so in addition to some longs being offsides with that, then you had possibly some insider selling, and that's how you get that really clean unwind. So that was an opportunity over the past week. And then UPST, this is kind of a quintessential name of the IWM kind of index, kind of like these small companies, or at least smaller. You have some other ones like I think CVNA and MSTR that are in there as well. So kind of like the mid caps, but these are like the go-to names, like the squeeze names when a small cap index is really running, speculation's high. And so you can see that just like IWM, these can have really big trends as that short interest basically gets cleared out, as shorts are offsides, and you have these big moves up, and then it'll reach a pivot point like towards a big monthly options expiration, or when the market turns, and then it goes from being a trend to more of a mean reversion setup and mindset, and then you can play those on the way down. And so I actually had some puts on UPST that I was able to capture. Not a huge trade, but I did capture some of this move as it started to mean revert. And so just these big trends, and then they switch based on the key variables down to mean reversion. All right, next we have Silo. This was one, and we've been having a couple of these in the markets, kind of these half liquidity trap, half squeeze names. It's basically the process of a stock having a ramp up, and then it starts to consolidate. And in most markets, and part of the reason why short selling is so profitable is because you have high probability trades where these names are up on some kind of press release. They kind of consolidate around for a little bit, and then they flush. But we're in a market where a lot of these are holding now. And so we talk about these liquidity traps where you have this huge volume day, big spike up, and then it starts to really just consolidate. And what you're looking for, if you're looking to play these long, is you're looking for that big volume day, a big move up, and then for it to consolidate and start to hold a level. And so SILO was holding really well around that $2 level. It dipped underneath it a little bit, but it kept absorbing. And what we mean by that is that there's buyers around that level that are repeatedly tested. And so, in a normal course of things, you might have this big move up, this clear out move where it kind of swipes up, and then, it gets off sides and fails to follow through and goes all the way back down. And so that's really what a lot of shorts that are watching this are looking for. But what happens is that if you don't get that failed follow through to continue, and you basically just have those shorts shorting up here, and then it flushes and then kind of soaks up again. The shorts never got their exit, and it happens again and again and again. And so you basically have more and more shorts adding to it, using this as their risk level, adding into it, but there's a buyer right here, and that buy wall starts to creep up. And so if you have a lot of shorts that are in the stock, all using the same level as their risk, and you have, the buy level start to creep back up, and then you have that volume and have some real buyers step in, all of these shorts that have been collected in here need to get out at the same time. And that's how you get like a short squeeze. And so, you had a huge move on Silo. I was long on this, and I know a lot of other people in Investors Underground were also long on it. And then you kind of have the process repeat where it's, it goes up, it holds that level, but this is more of a classic example of when it retests, swipes, and then it fails because it's not holding this level anymore, and that's how you get like a more classic failed follow through. SCRV, a little bit similar, so not exactly a liquidity trap, but this had some news that NVIDIA had a small stake in the company, 62,500 shares or something. And it almost reminds me of like when that was reported of NNOX, a very similar situation where it's maybe from an early round, from investing years ago, or, some kind of like totally meaningless position in a small company. And the stock kind of runs with it. And so you had that initial news ramped up, and then it kind of consolidated, held this higher low, and you could just see the volume come back in, holding those higher lows. And this is how you get those big ramp up, or almost like a perpetual squeeze. Now this was only over the course of a day or so, but some of these can do the same thing for days at a time, or up to a week or two at a time. And you saw that with some things like ZAPP, IVP, and a couple other names as well. So, and I think that Stan, Godfather in Investors Underground, is he did a whole session on this while he was trading it live on the short side. So as it was spiking up and he was able to get some good positions in there and then cover on the way down and then kind of repeating that process. So whether you're trading it on the long side or whether you're able to trade it on the short side, it's really personal preference up to that point. VRPX, another similar name to SILO, and you can see very similar setup here where you have that first day, big move up, consolidation, shorts are trying to get it down, and it's absorbing, and you have all those shorts kind of getting collected in here until it hits a breaking point, breaks above those highs, the volume comes back in, huge squeeze out. And so I had a long position on this, and I know several other people did too in Investors Underground. And SCNI, this is another example of kind of a very trappy name. And so this was one where it had a big ramp up in like the pre-market, and then it kind of slammed back down, was holding this low, and then into the market open. It didn't break down, and you had huge amounts of volume, and so it had that nice squeeze out move there. So, these look like they're quick moves, but they can be, 100% move, 50% moves, and so plenty of range to capitalize on these if you have strategies to kind of tackle them. And then Mara, that was a big mover this week. You had crypto hold up really well. Despite some of the market turbulence, you had Bitcoin trending, and a lot of the associated stocks were making big moves as well. So again, you have this kind of big trend up, and then you can have that mean reversion. But as long as the key variables are in place, like with Mara, it's tracking the price of Bitcoin. That is going to be the main driver, and then along the way you'll have some volatility and some mean reversions. But the overall trend is definitely still more bullish as Bitcoin continues to break out. And then WULF, a smaller kind of crypto Bitcoin name, same kind of theme. And Judah and I talked about this, how some of the small crypto names have actually been performing than some of the bigger ones. And some of these have like an angle where they're involved in some AI stuff, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. Okay, so for the next part of Scan, I'm going to announce the t-shirt winners, and these were people who left comments on last week's video with Nate, who popped on to give an update about a bunch of things. So the people who left good comments on that video were the Credit Maniac and MMM Cake. Cake, very classy. And so you are both the t-shirt winners for that video. So you can email webmaster@investorsunderground.com to claim that prize. And so before we get on to the main watches with Stan, I just want to give the disclaimer that neither I nor Stan are financial advisors. These are not buy or sell recommendations, and this is for informational and educational purposes only. Now let's bring on Stan. All right, we got Stan on this week. Stan, welcome back to Sunday Scan or Sunday Stan.
All right, Chris, thank you. Yes, thank you for having me. It's good to be back, and pretty wild market out there.
Very wild market. So I know that you've been very active. I've been very active. The whole IU community's been active. So do you have any market thoughts? And then as we get into our main scans, what are you watching for the upcoming week?
Yeah, sure. So as far as some market thoughts, I think what we're seeing around as far as opportunities, we have at least 3 to 4 daily, and that's been standard for the last couple of weeks. And whether you're looking at on the short side, or on the small cap side, you've had SILO, you've had NAAS. The one today, we're recording on a Friday, so the one today, SERV. So there's been plenty of action on the small cap side, pretty much daily, and then also on the large cap, we've had Nvidia, we've had Tesla has been in the crosshairs, obviously Amazon, Google. And then today, I believe it was CrowdStrike, CRWD, that had that technical difficulties, and it's a pretty impactful headline, I think, as far as their their business, right? So anything for me that comes when I see a headline that impacts core business, I pay attention to that because it at least it will provide volatility and opportunity over the next few days until the market figures it out and it settles on whatever the right price is. So that's the exciting part. So like I said, I think those are my overall thoughts on the market. Plenty of opportunity. I think it's a market where you're able to size in, you're able to really narrow your risk exposure, and because of the liquidity being there, you're able to actually size into positions with relatively small risk exposure. And it's a great market to perform. And also, if you're finding yourself not performing in this market, that's perfectly fine. It's not a must. It's just, what have you seen before? What are you prepared for? And where can you utilize the knowledge you've gained as a trader over the years? I think Nate mentioned it some time ago, but in times of uncertainty, sideways or slowly up is better than backwards. And if this is not your market, there's nothing wrong with sitting on the sidelines and waiting for something that you recognize. So that's, those are pretty much my overall thoughts on the market. Yeah.
Great.
And
yeah, I feel like part of like a good small cap or a good market, in general, because it's not just small caps, it's really, there's opportunity everywhere. And Nate's compared it to like the COVID market, where you just have this volatility. You have range, you have moves with range. And a lot of times as traders, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find, an entry on a setup, and so kind of like, for the most part, where like we enter a play is pretty similar in most kinds of markets. You're basing it off of a level or other things. But what's good about these types of markets is that, your risk is still kind of the same, but when something moves the direction that you're expecting it, whether it's up or down, the range is more than normal with more than normal volume. And so that's why it's a market with good opportunity, because, you're taking the same risk as you do in any market, if not a little bit less risk, because it's less choppy, and you can get that really nice, trend or those big moves with magnitude when you're right. And so that's part of the reason why I like this type of market, where things trend well, you have large moves, and you're not just stuck in like these kind of channels bouncing off the edges. Those are the types of market that I'm not too fond of, but we have a mix over time. So having strategies for any type of market situation is definitely helpful. But Stan, so what are a couple of names that you have on watch for the upcoming week?
Yeah. So let's see here. We can share the screen, and then let me pull up this Zap right here. So the first one that I have on watch is ZAPP. Unfortunately, today it had a nice, on Friday it had a nice fail right off the 14s level, and then high mid to high 13s, 14s level, and then after it had that clear out into the 1550s. So essentially, these were the couple of levels that we identified in the room very early on. I believe last week, or whenever this day right here on July 9th. So essentially, on July 16th, right over here. So just earlier in the week, as it broke through the 1350s, 70s line, it cleared out. You can see it being resistance here, and even on the front side of the move. That's where we had that indecision, the little congestion area between the 1370s and 1550s area. You can see the multiple retests until it cleared out, and then it failed. So that was the idea here, is monitor the 1550s. I believe I traded it this day, and pretty much I think I put on a little starter every day because I was expecting this type of move that we got today. And I wasn't around the desk in the morning, so didn't participate. But overall, there's plenty of range left on as far as the bigger time frame, as far as the daily chart. So I'll be keeping this name on watch for the upcoming week, and we'll use some of the previous levels. So if on Monday any sort of pop, or versus 12s, 13s, ideally if we decide to retest this area, that would be ideal, and then rejoin once it fails. So that's a ZAPP. And along with the same type of trades or tickers as ZAPP, I'm also watching NNE and IVP and RGS. So these are, these obviously different charts. They're a little bit, differently structured, but overall, I can lump them in the same type of category, same type of trade behavior, and I know in a way what the sizing should look like, what the expected range should look like, etc. So all of these, ZAP, RGS, NNE, they all fall into this one category, and for me, ideally, something on ZAP is what I'm looking like. I'm looking for something like MLGO. We had this nice clear out, and then once it exhausted, it never looked back on very, very low volume. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for in ZAP, and then eventually in RGS, NNE, and IVP, I believe was the other one. Yeah. So that's some of these, and then we have DJT is the other one that I haven't watched. Obviously, big volume here, almost 80 million or whatever this ended up being. Yeah, almost 81 million shares, and then it got sold off pretty hard the entire day, and then it's been weak ever since. So clearly, we can see how this ticker is influenced by outside events, and it's something to expect when trading it. So for me, what I would be looking for is that slow and steady unwind, maybe into the mid to low 20s over the course of the next few days or weeks, and then essentially wait until the next catalyst, until the next event, or if something else surrounding the ticker per se. The next one that I haven't watched is Coin. This one is more so with along with the recent crypto move. Obviously, we had Bitcoin, a nice little rally there, ETH as well. So now we're just monitoring this. I think for me, bigger picture, this could set up like an NVIDIA or like Tesla type of trade, where we wait for the parabolic, maybe versus 300s or something like that, parabolic, and then have that one day where it cannot catch its footing. So I will be monitoring Coin for in the coming days. This one is HIMS, HIMS. Nice rejection there off the 24 levels. I was watching it a few weeks ago, somewhere in the low 20s range, right over here. But now what I like about this chart is we're nearing key level there into the high teens. So if this level fails, we could see some decent unwind again. I'm not looking to be early. I'm looking to react to some sort of a level on a higher time frame, and clearly we can see the 2021s is something that I can use as a guide in the upcoming week. But essentially, higher the better, and looking for a fail to follow through momentum. Just keep on joining the trend versus VWAP as we've seen over the last several days. And the last one that I haven't watched is SERV, SERV. Actually, I did have some trades on it today. And this one, a nice little mover. Pretty much since 10 a.m. it started its rally and move. We had a nice exhaustion candle here into the 680s, right over here, and then, but overall it it continued to hold this same trend line and the same higher low, even though it had exhausted into the 680s. So for me, this trade today, we actually started a midday session there with all the moderators in the room, and this is when I put this trade on, just a little placeholder, and all of these trades we actually did live up until right about here when we closed the stream. So this was good commentary in the room, and it's just something to keep in mind and review for later on as well. And as far as the upcoming week, what I'd like to see on this, obviously, since we're recording on Friday after hours, we still have some action here, so we don't know exactly where it's going to close. But I would like to use the levels of that kind of formed today, and use them as a guide going off on going into the next week on Monday. So clearly, this 8 level is of interest. We had a nice exhaustion. It came back, cleared out, and then once it failed, reconfirmed into the 820s, and then it failed, continued to fail lower into the 7s and high 6s. So on Monday, ideally, any sort of push or clear out versus 850s, 9s will be of interest. Or even if we gap down and we try to get into this congestion area here, into the 7s, mid 7s, or high 7s, and if that rejects and it stays heavy versus VWAP, then I don't mind joining that trend as well. And that's pretty much it. What I have on watch for next week.
Excellent. And okay, I'll pull up a couple of mine and we'll go over those. So the first one that I have is CrowdStrike. So that's CRWD. So this was the one that was, the big impactor on the market, and a couple other things today. They had a software update. It went wrong. You got the blue screen of death, like that, like these airports and like all these places that use this technology, we're basically at a standstill. And so that was not good. So obviously the stock, crashed pretty hard on that. It was down, 10, 12% or so. So now, we're coming up to some points where it's at resistance. And so I kind of have a plan for 2 possible scenarios. The first one is that, it kind of opens weak on Monday and, but holds those levels and then starts to basically build up a little bit higher. And then maybe you have some shorts off sides and you get a nice bounce on it. And then the other situation is maybe on Monday or early next week, it starts to ramp up a little bit and it starts to get sold off. And really what I'm looking for is what is moving aggressively. Is the supply wall moving aggressively, or is the demand wall moving aggressively? And what I mean by that is, price is just the point in between the supply and the demand wall. And so what I want to see are people who have been holding this stock, are they using any chance to basically get out on pops? So every time the stock ramps up, is that supply being aggressive and using that to get out? And then on the flip side, into flushes, is that demand wall strong? Have people been trying to get into the stock for a while and they're using those dips as a chance to soak that up? And so those are just a couple of clues that I look at when you have these big gaps, either down or up. It's, we talk about what happens next, and that's really like, what is being aggressive? What's being the aggressor? Is it more the supply side trying to get out, or the demand side trying to soak it up? And that can give some really good clues. So that'll be a name that I just have loosely on watch for the week ahead, and we'll see. You can kind of make a case either way, because one is, even with a software update like this, how many of their customers are actually going to leave? Where else can they go? And so if they retain 95% of their customers, maybe you have a little bit of an impact to earnings and revenue, but it's also possible that most of the customers stay. And then on the flip side is, okay, well, you had all these things shut down. What if they get hit with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and they get sued for billions of dollars, which would impact their gross profits and their cash reserves and things like that. And so, we don't really know all the details yet, but we're kind of at a pivotal point where I'll be looking for news and clues to see, which direction is easier for it to go. So those are just a couple thoughts on that. And then the next one is, I believe we have IWM up there. Yeah, so this was one that we were keeping track of over the last, week or 2 weeks, and really what we saw happen was this big rotation in the market from the AI names, from the large cap tech names, into some of the small caps. And IWM is just basically the index that tracks the Russell 2000, and so it's all the small companies kind of bundled up together, and it's been a huge lagger in this market, as you've had, rates have been higher, and like things like that make it difficult for small companies to really get some traction. So you basically had a couple of things happen where, we got softer inflation data, we got, Trump's odds of getting in kind of rose after some of the incidences. And so all those things kind of helped small caps to rally a little bit. And so we were watching this all week and kind of comparing it to like when that SMCI or NVIDIA or Tesla trade set up, where you basically have like, what's the go-to name for all the call options and for a lot of buying. And you have that go on for a couple of weeks or maybe a week. And you basically have it go up, 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 and very little dips along the way. And then you get to kind of like a pivot point. And for a name that's very call option driven, that is like the monthly options expiration. So that was, this Friday. And so as you have all those call options basically being bought all along the way, that like those flows help the stock up. But then once you get to like those Thursday and Fridays, you start to have, that start to reverse. And so it's kind of like a high tide, comes in till it hits a point, and then you have low tide, and then it starts to turn. And so just like the call options were helping it on the way up, once it gets, closer to expiration, those call options start to decay, and it actually starts to weigh on the stock and pulls it down. And so what we were waiting on is for that point where basically it went from being nonstop bid and the flows were helping it to when it kind of pivoted and it started to act more heavy, and then the call options started to weigh on it. And we had some really nice trades on that with puts as it kind of made that turn from, the tides coming in to the tides coming out. And so this will be on watch into next week, because I want to see if this pullback was just due, kind of to the options positioning and maybe some overextended buyers in there and getting flushed out, or, are rates starting to tick back up, and does it actually change the case for small cap? So I don't think we know yet. My kind of feel is that we will continue to be somewhat bid into next week, but I need to be proven right by seeing how it handles those flushes and those dips. And I want to see it rip back and then, start to see more call option buying and basically like a bullish theme with the market. So that is on watch for next week. If it starts to set up long again, I'll join the trend long, with call options. And then if it starts to act weak and maybe, some things change in the market, some news changes, and we start to really flush back down to where it came from. And if that's the case, then I would flip my bias towards more puts. And then the next name that we have is Coin, which you already covered, Stan, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but basically the same kind of idea where you have like this larger theme in place. You have Bitcoin that's doing well. It's actually holding up very well in this market, even though some of the equities have been a little bit, held down, or they flushed over the last few days. But crypto's been doing well, and basically Coin is a play on increased crypto activity, because that's how they make a lot of their money via trading and basically high volume activity on the exchanges. And so Coin is on watch as long as crypto's bid and activity is high, unless we get some kind of big flush in Bitcoin, then I might flip my bias. But I mostly have a bullish bias until we get to like a big exhaustion point, like you were saying, and then you can kind of start to change your bias from going with the trend to when is it likely to mean revert. And that's just a big thing for my trading, and something that I've been trying to talk about for the last few months. It's where if you have things with incredible range, if you have strategies to play both the upside and the downside, really the difficult part is just deciding on when to flip your bias. And so, understanding what's driving the stock and then using those kind of key variables to tell you when it flips to a mean reversion. So is it call option buying driving the stock? Is it Bitcoin driving the stock? Like, is it the general market driving the stock? Like, what is helping this along? And then when those factors start to change, then you can change your bias and you can get those mean reversion plays. And then what was the next one I had on there, Stan?
I think you had Tesla, I think, was on there.
Tesla, yeah. So this was, kind of my previous one, similar to IWM. you had that big run up in Tesla, and then you have the bias switch Thursday, Friday, and you can play the mean reversion. But Tesla has earnings on Tuesday, and so we could be very well positioned for the next leg up if earnings are good. But earnings are such a coin flip, especially in this market. But it's hard to have like any kind of big conviction on a name that's about to have earnings, because you could gap down or gap up, sometimes 10 or 15%. So my bias is more bullish on Tesla. I think that a lot of the difficult things are behind it. But if we get a bad earnings report and it kind of kills it, then it needs to consolidate for a month or so to be able to recover from that. But I have a slightly bullish lean on Tesla. It's a top watch if it starts to act bullish leading up to earnings and then after earnings. But I won't trade it overnight on earnings itself. But leading up to it and after, that is a top watch on the long side. And then the last one that we had on there was SOXL. And so, these are all like the chip names, and you can see that we've just had a really, really nice flush. This is a triple levered one, so this has more range than even the names like NVIDIA or some of the other ones. But really, when you see like a big, significant flush in a name that's been in play for a long time, you really want to see, when could that mean revert? And so just like we were talking about, like following a trend until it's time to mean revert on the long side, it's the same thing down here where you had things kind of sell off for the last week or 2 weeks, and you had a big gap down. And so now leading into next week, we'll see if some of the variables change, and it might be time to play a mean reversion on the long side. So something's been selling off, and now it's time to pivot and look for a bounce, potentially, if I'm proven right, if the names that are in the index are strong and the market itself is strong. But otherwise, I won't force it. But, I'm just trying to look for names that could have potentially good range. I have some kind of thesis on it. I know what to look for, and then I'm looking for kind of just like an entry level in order to get either puts or calls or long equity or something like that. So that's basically what I have on watch for the upcoming week. Stan, did you have anything to add on any of those?
No, I think that covers it pretty nicely, and it's nice to see when multiple theses from various sources or people that are within your circle align, because that in a way tells you a little bit more information, right? It in a way, just like how we're looking at coin or how we're looking at CrowdStrike next week, expecting the volatility, etc. And just one final comment, given the volatility we have seen, is it can be forgiving, right? Volatility, it can be very forgiving as long as you don't fight it and cut the positions right away or scale into the right spots. So that's pretty much it all for me.
Okay, so we went over a lot. We have some great watches for the upcoming week. And then just a reminder, IU is running this special trial period. So you need to click the link. I'm telling you, if there's one thing that you do from the scan, click the link, because they've never done this before. And they did this deal specifically so that literally anyone could check out Investors Underground. So the pricing and everything for this window to basically just get a snapshot of what we offer, and you'll get a peek behind the door and have access to everything for a small window of time. So if you've been on the fence about IU, definitely check this out, and give it to other traders in your pod too, because the cost is so low that you can see if your friends or whoever you trade with would also get value out of this, to see if it would improve your pod's trading and the people that you trade with. So definitely check that out. I can't recommend it enough. So click the link there. And that's basically all we have for this week. So Stan, thank you for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see everyone on Monday.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Have a great weekend.
You too.